we are done with Shingen 2, and with that, I can now move on to our favorite part of the whole stream, which is a review of Shingen 2 and like about how I felt with my experiences with playing this game. So first we'll go with let's first go with story first. So because this is an RPG, this is very story driven, and so the story is probably the best part of the game, and like that's probably why what motivated me to play through this game in the first place is because the stories are usually pretty good. Like the story of the first game was pretty good, was really good. It was actually very good. Like I really enjoyed it. This one, like there are some very cool parts, and there's some like very sad and very like things that make you think, that were very gray decisions. Unfortunately, I feel like this game, like there's an explanation for this because like there was some really huge creative disagreement that happened in the middle of this game's development, and that's why the story just doesn't feel as good. Like I don't think, like the way it ended just now, where it's kind of like, okay, and Shenya just kind of dies, and that's kind of it. And like the ending's kind of rushed, and they don't really like. There's not really a whole lot. They don't show like the future or not even an epilogue either. So it's kind of unceremonious in a way. And I guess like, it's sad that you'll never see May again or something. But even then, like the whole thing was just. Like a lot of things were like, even like the demon lord, that whole thing they built up a lot of stuff, and then it kind of just fell flat. So it just feels like there's like a lot of the emotional impact of things were just really lessened because of like some really weird weird decisions with how the dialogue is. So and then the whole thing is just like, well, yeah, in the end is Chenya did stuff. And like honestly, the game could have ended like you're not really given like the whole Chenya thing, which is like, he's the mastermind behind everything. It's kind of like you're not meant to. They don't give you really strong reasons to suspect him at all. I mean, maybe you're like, but the writers are like, yeah, we're so clever. They would have never seen that coming. But at the same time, it's sort of like they didn't. I don't know. I feel like it's kind of out of nowhere. It's sort of like, and you suddenly decided to become ruler of the monster and humans, and that's how you were all along. And it's just kind of very. And the weird thing, like the whole things where he was plotting to do stuff, just kind of happened like very near the end of the game, and then May is like, "Hey, I thought you were the ones who did things," and then like that's how you find out, and you kind of find out like, I overheard something, and there's no like emotional impact, and it's like you could have. It's more like if you had caught him in the act, that would have been very, very different. And so yeah, the whole thing is kind of like it's okay. But I don't feel like I wasn't really caught I was caught off guard, sort of, but not really. It just feels kind of like the whole thing, like the exposition was kind of lame. So, but at the same time, it's still like, it's still enjoyable. It's not as good as the first game, and the characters, like, the other thing is like the character development is sort of not there really. I mean, I guess. Like, you're not really a mover or shaker of the game. Like, you just kind of follow things and things happen. Unlike Xiao Yao in the first game, whose actions had a great impact on the story. This one, you're kind of on the sidelines, sort of helping out, and then Xiao Yao was the one who did a bigger thing, and then Chenya is probably the biggest thing you've done the whole game, and it took that long for you to actually feel like you made an impact on anything. So it's okay. It's not bad, but it's not as strong. It's still better than a lot of JRPGs. They still talk a lot about interesting things, but it is not the best thing I've ever seen. I never felt like these characters have. Well, I mean, Yiru is awesome, but like, no, they didn't go through any changes. Like, Xiaohu's kind of the same, and Chi-Chi's kind of the same. There's no real like change either. It's kind of flat. The whole thing is kind of, it just feels like okay. And that's probably the reason why in the fan base this isn't considered one of the better entries. And as much as I like May too, and like it's sort of like they like that also, that kind of worked too, but it's sort of, it's like I've been helping you the whole time, and like yeah, May is probably the only, she's probably pretty memorable. Yiru and May are probably the more of the highlight of this one. But anyway, enough about the, I think that's, I've talked enough about the story. There's not a whole lot more to say other than like it's okay. And there is just some things that are missing, some blanks that are missing, like the whole how Wan became like went from Chang'an all the way. Like she didn't even talk about her, like she arrived in Chang'an and where like Jingyuan, and then she didn't do any talk about it at all. And you're just like, that feels like kind of a blank that was missing. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the story. It's okay. Like it's better than most JRPGs, as I said, but it's not the best thing. And alright, so in terms of graphics, it's a much improved over the first game. It's like the sprites are much better. Like the UI is much easier to see. The text is much easier to read in this game. And generally, for the most part, in the battles, you could see the numbers of the enemies you damage, except in one particular case, which is the boss we fought today. Not the final boss, the mini boss with the tall little wolf dude. And like it feels really like the sprite work looks really nice, and like like there's some really interesting monsters. The locales look good for its for 2D sprite work, and like the portraits are really great. You really like I love the art style, and like that's part of the appeal. So the music is very good. Is really good too. Like as Shenzhen as always. Oh, show you a trailer, a palette after the review. That would require me to change my setup. I've already put a trailer on the Facebook page. Sorry, I'll talk about palette after we're done with this review really quick. So graphically it looks really good. Like I really like the portraits look good, the character sprites look pretty good. And like you can tell like a lot of love was put into the world and like how it looked. The only thing is that like there are some things that there are some weird parts where like you can walk to certain places and get, but at least there wasn't so many graphical glitches like there were in the yes, I noticed the menu was a scroll. There weren't so many graphical glitches like in the first game. And that's also a good thing too. But yeah, the frame rate during battles was really off. I agree. It's kind of weird too. I think it's just less frames of animation. And I do like the spell animations are really good. What am I gonna say again? But yeah, in terms of music, yes, they didn't look as smooth because they didn't have as many frames of animation. And so that's why it has this choppy look sometimes, and I do agree. That's another thing I hadn't thought I should mention. The music is really, really good, as always. The sounds are pretty much spot on. There's very little weird. There's maybe one or two monsters where they went a little too crazy with the sound effects, so it gets really annoying. But it's really brief and it's minor. Alright, but let's talk about the real thing I want to talk about is the gameplay. And to be honest, like the first game, it's kind of boring, honestly. Even the final boss wasn't much of a challenge either. That was kind of boring too. It was just a tanky boss with not too much bite. Like the turn-based system is really, really boring, and like it gets, and you realize this because you can use the same move over and over again, the same exact strategy for like almost most of the game. And it gets really, really boring. And oh, nice. And like and like because there's no battle variation, like every battle becomes a chore. And like even though you can run away with Yiru if you want to, or you can use items, and even it's very hard to, at least they fixed one thing. They did fix a bunch of things about the gameplay. They made it so that moves don't take as long, because like you can do moves all together if you're doing single targets. The only thing is like summoning takes summon spirit ultimate moves take way too long, and like you wish you could skip it. What else am I gonna say again? Yeah, regular human moves take too long, and it's a chore to watch after like the 10th, the 20th, the 30th time. And also, there's just no strategy. Like the elemental barriers are kind of like strategy, but other than that, that's pretty much it. I was able to go through the game without barriers for the most part, except I only used them in bosses, and then it was okay. And with certain enemy formations, and that was it. Item inventory. The item inventory system is also terrible, as I've mentioned many times. Like really, it needs sort. It needs like tabs to easily find items, and they need to label items that came in as new, and they don't do that, and so it's very inconvenient to manage your inventory because it's just an overwhelming amount of items to go through. And I hope they improve it for the future games, but I don't know yet. And like it's sad, and like there are just better ways to figure this out. And even FF6, now that I think about it, had better inventory system. It was easier to go through. So that's kind of disappointing. Like they made it such a nice UI, but they didn't take advantage of the spaces. What else I want to say again? But yeah, so I feel like this is once again like Shingen 1. The battle system is always the stumbling block of this series. Like you have an interesting story. You have cool looking characters. You could make yeah, good. I'm glad it is. I hope they learn from this one. But like you have a good story. You have a good setting. You can do lots of things. But the battle system is so boring and it's so dry, and then you feel like it's Dragon Quest. It's basically Dragon Quest, except slightly less interesting, honestly, because you don't have these. Dragon Quest at least has the silliness to it, or even Earthbound has silliness, and you can do interesting things. You can heal in time, but this game you cannot do that, and like it gets very dry and it's kind of boring. And so I feel like this has always been the weakness of this series in particular, Shingen or Legend of Sword and Fairy. So hopefully the third game will be better, but I have no idea. I honestly like. The only reason why I really played through this game was because of the story. I wanted to find out what happened. I wanted to see what would happen, and yeah, that's basically it. And what else do I want to talk about? Let's see. I've gone to the story, graphics, and music and sound. I mean, like I guess that's pretty much it. I don't have anything else to. Yeah, I don't have anything else to say. I just hope that Shingen, like the future games, will have, like I have seen a little of the, like I do know like the selling point for these kind of games is mostly the story, but I do hope they improve on the gameplay aspects, because really like for Shingen 1, like if they had, like Shingen 1 had this thing where it had a great story, but the battle system was really boring and slow, and basically the game would have been perfect if it had a better battle system and it didn't crash half the time. It crashed a lot. This game didn't crash a lot. That's a huge improvement. I had not seen a crash. There's some glitches, and it's really strange, but they were actually a lot better. This game is a lot better written, but it's just stupid that it's just too bad that the battle system is still just as boring, and so it feels like every battle's a drag, and it's so hard to get through without running into enemies and not having to use and run away. So yeah. So hopefully they'll fix it for future games, and maybe it'll be more interesting. Anyway, and now that I think about it, I guess that's pretty much it for Shingen 2, my Shingen 2 review. I think I've covered all of the main points. I can't think of anything else that I haven't already talked about. So would I recommend this? Okay, here's the thing. And the thing about this game is that you need good Chinese skills, or at least the ability to handle like figure it out. And like sometimes they use a lot of Chengyu, so this is actually a really difficult game. So if you're learning Chinese for the first time, this is not the game you should start with. We would probably be better off playing some RPG Maker game in Chinese, and that would be better because those are a lot of RPG Maker games that take place in modern settings will have more things closer to what you would have to you'd hear in real life, and that would probably be your best starting point. This is a very difficult game to start with. Grandia, I have played Grandia 3, but not Grandia itself, so I've never played it. Why do you mention Grandia? Oh, and let me see. So if you can have a good enough level of Chinese to handle this game, or can kind of figure it out, then would I recommend you playing the game? Sure. I actually think that the story is still good enough that you feel like you're interested in what's going on, and even though it's not the best thing I've ever played, you still feel interested and invested, and you want to find out what happens, and you just have a lot of fun despite its battle system flaws, despite everything. So that's a testament to how fun these stories are to go through. So yeah, you should give it a try. If you aren't a big fan of Grandia, as a hint for the next. Okay, haven't played Grandia, so I think that hint is lost on me. Like, if you have had a lot of fun with, if you don't like turn-based battles, you're probably gonna hate this game. And honestly, at that point, you might as well just watch a playthrough of it, and you'd probably get all the bullet points, and you'd be faster. There was one thing I wanted to mention. There is one great improvement about this game, is that the dungeons don't take 1,000 years to do. I actually think the dungeon length for this game is appropriate for what it should be. And like, I really hope that this series continues with this. I don't know if it does, but these are all well paced. The dungeon pacing in this game is a lot better than the first game. So that is one thing I really liked about it. And there are some side quests which are new to this game, and that's pretty good too. So that's that. Yeah, I think with that, I think I've actually covered all the bases. And yeah, I guess when next time we're gonna play Shenzhen 3 will be later this year. So we will play that